Welcome to Compression, the quest to $100 million in just 1 year. Join me, your host, Logan Freeman, in this one-of-a-kind interactive podcast experience where I am on a quest to compress 3 years of achievement and production into 12 months. And no, the answer is not to just work harder. I'm bringing you not only ideas and concepts that are complete at the theoretical level, but they're also effective at the applied level. Look, guys, knowledge is not power. It is potential power. Knowledge plus massive strategic action equals power. We're talking about strategy, systems, accountability, all in real time. This is Compression. Hey guys, we are back with another episode of Compression. Jerome just finished the 6th. This is early morning, and we're bringing a special monthly recap episode. Jerome, how you doing today, man?
Phenomenal. You know, I earned the right to come sit with you. I couldn't come sit, and I hadn't done the work. So I've done the morning routine, and now it's time to pour into you and make sure that we get this next month set up right after we reflect on the month that we've just went through.
Well, very much appreciate your time. You know, I used to think that massive action solves every problem. And I started to really kind of challenge that thought because early in my career, it was very, and I'm still early in my career, but earlier in my career, it was very shotgun oriented. And, I found out that notion was just incredibly stupid. And because massive action without a really great strategy only gives you more problems. And so what I've been really focused on last 12 months and on an ongoing basis is figuring out how to pair that massive action with even better strategy. And one big piece of that is obviously setting the months up, reflecting on the previous months, and then making changes. And so that's exactly what we're going to do here today. So I think maybe what we'll start off with is give everybody kind of a, maybe a background on what I was setting out to accomplish this month. And then we'll talk about some lessons learned, wins, losses, and then how I'm going to change that going forward, man. So without further ado, I'll just jump right in. So as people know, I'm always tracking the daily disciplines, meaning what am I doing on a regular basis, creating habits that are going to create those systems that lead to those results. And so any given week, I have 52 to 59 kind of daily disciplines per week. So I track those. And the last 5 weeks, I've hit about 259 out of those 280 disciplines, which means I'm at 93% of those daily disciplines. And so when I think about that, I said, that's good. That's good action. That's good strategy. But some of those daily disciplines are already turning into habits. And so the way that we continue to level up is create new habits, put new disciplines on there. For example, one thing that's not on my daily disciplines list anymore is drinking 200 ounces of water because I have no problem doing that anymore. It means nothing to me to make a check mark on my daily disciplines list of drinking 200 ounces of water whenever I'm drinking 300 ounces without thinking about it. So that has created a new habit, a new very good, healthy habit for me. So I've been replacing those habits with new daily disciplines to turn those into new habits. And I think that's something that people really need to understand is when you're tracking this type of activity, you need to make changes because, it's not something to just check off the box. This is to help level up to that next level. And so just wanted to give everybody a recap on kind of where my month was. I definitely kept the momentum going from 2020 into 2021. From a volume standpoint, we will talk through kind of where we're at on the $100 million goal, which right now we're sitting at 4.2 million completed this year towards that $100 million mark. Now, if anybody's, obviously, if anybody is familiar with commercial real estate, January, there's not usually typically a lot of closings. They usually kind of push to the end of the first quarter. So we have a monster month in February. We have $13.5 million worth of real estate closing in February. And our total pipeline right now to close by the end of March is 26.2 million through that quarter. So we're definitely tracking on the $100 million mark. We have to keep kind of thinking through, the projects that might fall through or might get pushed. And, we need to get some more projects under contract. So what I've been really focused on that goal is getting LOIs out. So we have a KPI around how many letters of intent are we getting out per week. Our goal is 1.5. We're tracking right about 2, on the acquisition side. And we're getting all kinds of LOIs out for brokerage clients, which is very exciting because I have a pretty good pulse on what's happening in Kansas City from a transaction standpoint, because not only am I involved on the acquisition side, I'm very involved with outside money coming into Kansas City on the brokerage side of the business as well. So 3 biggest wins from this last month was dominating my schedule, taking the time back, focusing on those high value tasks. And, this has obviously been a number one goal for me on the business side of things all January. And I'm going to continue to do this because I'm not there yet, but I at least have taken measures to kind of put some systems in place around dominating my schedule. The second one is prioritizing Taylor and the kids. And the way that we've been doing this is simply by winding down, starting at 4 p.m., making sure to put my do not disturb on, not touching my phone from 5 to 7:30 in the evening. So all these different boundaries that I've been putting on my own self and my own business. And the last big win was implementing the journals and the ideas. So I talk a lot about virtues. This quarter is all about temperance and moderation, and asking myself and creating a new kind of cue, just like you were talking about when I asked you why you still run the 6, is, asking myself, would the best version of myself actually do this? What would the best version of myself do in this scenario? And that question between stimulus and response is starting to lead to new actions. So those are some of the top wins from January. Jerome, do you want to dial down into any of those 3?
I want to go back to something because I think there's a concept that the listeners can grab here that they may not be familiar with. And so you talked about turning daily disciplines into habits.
Yeah.
Habits make your life, right?
That's right.
And so activities or choices become habits, habits become life. Once the activity goes into a habit, then there's this concept of habit stacking, right? And it's a slight shift from what you're doing where you're adding in something new because you're already doing the thing that's moving you to a healthier life. But you can stack things on the front or the back of something that you do every day. A great example of this is you brush your teeth. Maybe you say your affirmations to yourself while you're standing in the mirror.
Yep.
You get in the shower, instead of listening to music, you listen to something that's educational, that's going to move you closer to your goal of doing whatever, buying a property or being a better husband or being a better father or whatever it is. So there's a real opportunity for you to add on to the things that you do every day with activities that serve you instead of take from you. And so that habit stacking concept is something that I really want people to grab hold of. Just at the highest level, I think you've had a phenomenal month. Yeah, you did hit 93%. Is that the ideal number for you? No, you want to do 100. I get it. But I think it's an outstanding month. And, the proof is in the pudding, right? You're getting results. Things are moving. You overcame challenges. And it's this part is so amazing. So each one of those points that you collected was you making a promise to yourself and then keeping it.
Yes.
And then when it came time for you to reach in a cookie jar, when you told yourself that you were going to do something you hadn't done before, you're able to reach in a cookie jar and think about all the things that you've done and the fact that you reflected on them and pull that out and use that as motivation to go to the next space. So I think that's huge. The only thing that I wanted to dive into, and I will say that the 5 to 7:30 is a real thing. You really aren't reachable then. And that's dinner time. It's time when everybody's hanging out and the kids go up at 7:30. And so you can plug back in, but you've quarantined or, just siphon off that time so you can make sure that you're allocating the resource to the thing that you say is super important. And that's the family. On the high value task concentrating on them. What activities have you identified that are not high value tasks and you need to figure out how to delegate or not do?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is email management for me. And I haven't necessarily figured it out other than putting more boundaries on that email management. So, not, I turn my notifications off on email. So I'm not letting it run my life. And I'm checking email on a regular basis. And so, on a regular interval, sorry, not a regular basis, but just checking it, once or twice throughout the day instead of, 15 or 16 different times. So that's one of the lower value tasks that has previously pulled me in a lot of different directions and imposed its will on me and created anxiety. So that's one. The second is really focusing on batching my scheduling. So I get a lot of requests to be on podcasts, to be on speaking engagements, to meet people in person. And so when I'm batching these, I'm scheduling them all at the same time, but then I'm batching them from a scheduling standpoint all at the same time as well. So if I'm meeting somebody in person, then I'll try to get 3 or 4 meetings in person that day. Frankly, because, sometimes I don't leave the home office and I don't want to have to get ready every single day and leave and then mess up my routine. So for me, it's batching calls and batching in-person meetings at the same time. Scheduling that usually happens only on Fridays and Saturdays for me instead of checking all that during the week. With that being said, one of the things that we were talking about before we started recording was working through, figuring out how to get a personal assistant in my life, not only for household tasks that I'm doing, but these things that I'm mentioning, to you right now, because, I have a few different businesses. I have 3 emails that need to be monitored at all times and figure out what needs to be delegated and what needs to be acted upon. So, that's going to be something I'm going to be working towards. I don't know exactly when that will happen. Maybe I'll set a goal this quarter by March, the end of March, I can have, a personal assistant kind of, lined up and ready to go. So still a work in progress on that front.
Okay. And at one point, I think it was before we started recording, you told me you're spending 3 hours managing your schedule a week. 3
At least.
hours.
Yeah.
That's almost 10% of a 40-hour work week, man.
Yep.
Or yeah, that's almost 10%. So how is there anything you can implement right now that could reduce that and allow you to get that back?
Yeah. I mean, no, because I haven't, not yet, because I haven't allowed somebody that intimacy into my schedule to actually put things on my calendar. So the control piece that I have over my schedule right now means that I'm not allowing other people to put meetings on my calendar only in very specific times. And so I think for me, really having to have somebody come in and say, okay, this is when Logan wants to do these things, when he can do these things and is willing to do these things, is going to be something that I work with somebody one-on-one on, because of maybe the control freak piece of me of, hey, I don't want to have an in-person meeting at 11 and then have, 15 calls in the afternoon. That's just not good for my schedule. So somebody really needs to come in, intimately know how I work and my schedule flow. And I need to create some structure around that where somebody can take that off my plate.
Okay. I will challenge you to think about Calendly. It eliminated my need for a person to manage my schedule, and you can set up the blocks for the things that you want to happen.
Yep.
And so if Friday's in-person meeting day, the only time people can schedule with you is on the Fridays that you allow for it to happen.
Yeah.
If there's phone calls with investors, you can block those 15-minute increments and let them schedule away. But they only get the link if you share the link.
Right.
And that right there is the magic for me. And then because of your focus on your business not running your life running your business,
right,
you can also quarantine or take off the times if you want to have breakfast with Taylor, or if you want to hang out with Bella, or if you want to spend some time with Z-Man, or if you just want to have white space and thinking time. You can block all those off so that they're never available for anybody. And whether you do that with Calendly or you do it with a person, you're still going to have to do those things. And that is going to require you to slow down, which is going to be painful. You're going to feel like you're not making progress. So I don't want you to be surprised when you feel those feelings of slowing down, but you're slowing down to go faster in the future.
Let me be clear. Calendly has given back at least 15 hours a week for me in my weeks. So I do use that on a regular basis. I think that what I need to do is level up on Calendly, right? Have different blocks for different types of meetings at different times. So that's a great point, Jerome. I usually just use it to schedule calls, but I need to block off certain time in my calendar where people, if we do want to get in person, this is when we can do that. So that's a good push. Yeah.
I will tell you, when I was scheduling my podcast interview with David Metzler, I had my system because you're coming on my podcast, and they said, here is David's blocks.
Yep.
Which one do you want? Right. And it was because he is who he is. I participated in the game. Normally
Sure.
I wouldn't. I would just say, you know what, never mind. But I wanted the interview. Right. So
Yep.
when people are coming to you and they want you on the show, here is when Logan records. It's the only way you get the link. And then if you need to switch out the Zoom or whatever, that takes 10 seconds, but it gets the job done.
Absolutely.
The one other thing that I think you're going to have to figure out a plan of action for is just there's going to be a perspective, and I don't even know if that's the right word, but it's the best I got this morning, of Logan's not reachable. I can't get to Logan.
Yep.
So I'm going to put money in FTW, but I can't get this guy on the phone. Like, what do I do? And that's going to create issues in some ways. And we just got to manage the risk or set the expectation so people know whatever we need them to know. Because if I say, Logan, I sent you an email, I called, you didn't answer, or it went straight to voicemail because it was on Do Not Disturb. I tried texting you. I might have got a text back or not. I don't know. But there's got to be a way, because you're customer facing, that
Absolutely.
people can feel like they have some form of access, and you have to protect yourself and your time. And so this right here is going to be a really pretty delicate dance that we've got to work through.
I'm already dancing that dance. You know, there's investors. Let me be clear too. Current investors, I always make time for, no matter what. It is my number one profit producing activity. And so, you know, we're going through a raise right now, and I realize I'm going to have to pivot and switch this week while we're getting documents signed and funding in. And so that is a high value task for me. So I do make time for current investors. Prospective investors are a different story, you know, and I always say, look, would you want your, you know, general partner on your deal to be able to be accessed 24/7? Probably not doing their job, right? And so I do set some expectations there. One thing I thought about, Jerome, is, you know, I'm moving away from AT&T and over to Verizon. And so in doing that, I think that I very well might, you know, keep my personal number, but then also get a new phone just for new business opportunities. So when I do bring that personal assistant on, they can carry that phone around, not me. And so, hey, I know I get 15 to 20 calls a day. I get 3 voicemails. I need you to go through those and handle those. Hey, you know, it's Logan's, you know, personal assistant. He's going to get back to you at this time. So that might be a really good push for me to get a new phone, transfer all business activities to that phone, and be able to hand that phone to somebody that can manage that.
Okay. That part's going to be important, and just communicating the message. What I've watched with people who are extremely, I'll call them wealthy, where they get to the place where they don't have to do that. They can have a person for that. They say that nobody's ever been upset that my assistant answered their question for them.
That's right.
Right. And so it doesn't have to be you. The need just needs to be met.
Absolutely. Yep. 100%. Great points. Took two really good takeaways there. Level up on Calendly and really think through the new phone for business activities. That will also help me continue to put more boundaries around my phone. It might be difficult for a while to say, hey, this is my new number, but you know, we'll get through that. Okay, so those are the 3 biggest wins. Thanks for helping me kind of work through those things. Biggest losses, you know, we touched on this the last week's episode, but there was a massive breakdown in communication on one of our projects that we had to make a big pivot on. And so making sure that clear expectations are in writing early on in the process with new joint venture projects is going to be crucial going forward. So a huge, huge lesson learned there. That was a big loss because that caused a lot of, potential pain in our business. The second being the health piece. So, I really need to start leveling up, I think, on my sleep. And that might require me getting up later in the day. And everybody knows that I'm a 3 to 3:30 a.m. guy. I was up at 3 a.m., taking my shower, getting ready for this podcast and making sure I got my morning routine in. But I realized that I operate really well whenever I get 3.5 hours worth of REM sleep. To get that, typically I need 7 hours of regular, sleeping time. And so I'm pushing towards a new habit of figuring out, okay, if I go to bed at 9:30, just realize, or 10:30, realize the next morning I'm not getting up till 4:30 and making my schedule work around that because, I don't want sleep to be an issue for my health. So that's a big loss for me in January was, kind of my sleeping, my eating, drinking, and just also feeling overwhelmed. So, I'm a hard critic on myself when it comes to eating and drinking and sleep. So it's not like I'm out partying and staying up super late, but I want to level up to that next level. Like, I know you, Jerome, you have no uppers and no downers. You have no alarm clock, man. That would be a huge goal for me in the next couple of years. It'll take me a couple of years to get there, but making sure that I can get to that point is big because I've dubbed this year the year of health for me, not only mental or physical health, but also emotional and mental health. And in January, I will tell everybody on the show today that I felt extremely overwhelmed at a lot of the different periods of time. Some of that's just coming off, hey, you're in commercial real estate, you're an entrepreneur, you start at zero every single year. Some of it is what happened in the business. Some of it is all of the new initiatives coming from December, pushing into January, putting, expectations on myself. So, and when I realize when I get good sleep, I attack all of those situations and all of those priorities in a much better light. So that was a loss for me this past month. The last loss was, we have no new deals under contract from an acquisition standpoint. To take, that's a somewhat of a loss, but also, we're not going to do bad deals. Whenever I sent our last project out and folks said, wait, you have that deal under contract for what price? That's what I want to hear in the marketplace, right? Is people look at the deal, they look at the location and they're like, these guys are not overpaying. Like that is incredible. And that's going to be a continued added advantage to our investors because we know the market pricing, we do not overpay. And really, we probably put 10 to 12 LOIs in to even get a conversation going with a seller. So we do not have any new deals under contracts, but I think that it's just, we're not going to change our underwriting to match, current deals out there. So really, we just have to continue to find more projects. So that means more deal flow. But that is a loss because in January, we wanted to have another deal. We were very close on a multifamily project in Grandview that we got outbid on from a due diligence standpoint. But again, they wanted 30 days worth of due diligence on an $8 million project. And I said, no, we're not going to do that. I cannot do that. And, if this person comes in and buys this thing and only does 30 days worth of due diligence on a massive project when, we're in the middle of COVID still on a workforce housing project that we don't know where collections are, so be it. But we'll be here. You know where we're at if you want to come back to us.
I don't think that deal's going to close. I just don't. It's too aggressive. They got themselves backed in the corner and they're going to do one or two things. They're either going to regret it or they're not going to close. One of the two.
Here's a crazy thing, man. Up in the historic Northeast where we were at when we were touring, where our building's wall fell down, just 1 mile away from that in the same neighborhood, we bought that property at $22,000 a door all in. And, just up the street, a deal, very nice deal, renovated to the max, just traded, no appraisal, cash for $115,000 a door. That's just wild to me. So maybe it does close, but that's okay because that deal probably at some point will come back to us. They'll call the brokers and say, hey, you remember those guys that were willing to buy that? Can they bail us out? Absolutely. We will bail you out. So it's just being patient on that. But the crazy stuff is happening here in Kansas City. I mean, 115 a door in the historic Northeast is like where I want to be in 10 years. I can't imagine that being 150 a door in 10 years. That's just wild to me. So we see a lot of crazy things happening out there in the marketplace, but I also always talk about, the cost of capital for some people and their scenarios are a lot different than ours too. That person maybe had a massive, tax liability that they need to have. Maybe they're going to go refinance a project at a later time, whatever, but that just doesn't fit our investment thesis. And we're not going to change that based on what other people are doing in the market.
Let me run back to the health thing real quick. I think, it's really interesting the way you cluster those things, and it falls right into the red pill model, right? So self-image, relationships, work, health.
Yep.
Right. And so those first three, self-image, relationships, work, create all the stress in your world.
Right.
And you had tremendous stress. And so then what happens when you have the anxiety? You try to find a way to soothe, and it's eating and drinking for you.
Yep.
And then when your diet is off, it impacts your sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so you end up in this, I call it the toilet bowl, right? You end up in the toilet bowl, and eventually the turd's got to hop out the toilet bowl, right? But until the turd hops out the toilet bowl, you're just there spinning. And I mean, if you're not careful, you go down the drain. But you got to swim and fight for another day. So
leave it to Jerome and Logan to talk about poop on a podcast.
You got to, man. I mean, people will never forget this.
That's true.
And what I will say is this, man: the eating and drinking and the working out piece, you didn't put it here, but the working out piece, all of those are choices.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I learned in 2020 that was most surprising for me is that when you eat sugar, it intensifies the feelings of anxiety.
Yeah.
It amplifies it. And then it makes you eat more sugar. Mm-hmm. And so it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And so what you've got to do is call a timeout. Yep. And say no. And this is one thing that may be valuable for you too, as you talk about creating more time, is having your food prepped, right? The Lumbee burrito is phenomenal, right? But knowing that that's going to be done is all right, and there's no thought to it, right? And it's just one less decision you have to make. No decision fatigue. But it also, I know I saw Taylor make you what was a toast with avocados and bacon, like that type of stuff is going to be phenomenal for your brain activity. It's going to be phenomenal for your heart, and the more that you can do, the better you're going to be able to take these blows, man.
Yes.
So peak performance, peak health.
Yeah, man. I mean, and listen, guys, I'm a young guy. I turned 31 this March, but I'm thinking about, okay, what am I going to be in 30 years? I got to be thinking 30, 40 years from now. Everybody always asks, how do you stomach, getting Taylor flowers every single week? Well, here's how I stomach it. I've mapped out exactly what it'll cost me over the lifetime of us doing that for the next 40 years. And the benefits far outweigh any of the cost associated with it. And that's just one example, right? I mean, it's just one example because I'm not thinking about tomorrow. I'm not thinking about next week. We're thinking about, hey, how are you going to be in 20 years from now? Just think if the Compression Podcast had 20 years of episodes. I don't even know if people will listen to podcasts in 20 years. I have no idea. But just think if we just stuck with this for 20 years. We can look back 20 years from now and watch this video. That's what I'm thinking about. Not only from the investment standpoint that we do from the real estate side, but investing in my personal thing. And if you don't get it right now, you're not going to get it right 20 years from now. It's just not going to happen.
This goes back to the habits, man. Goes back to the habits. This is a habit. It's something you do. And for people who call it a cost, they don't get it. It's an investment. It's an investment in a relationship. It's an investment in the person that you love the most. Like, make the investment. Stop trying to figure out ways to shortcut that part of the process, guys.
So that segues perfectly into one of the biggest lessons learned in this January. And I wrote down that my development is crucial. Darren Hardy had a concept that he still practices on a regular basis is 10% of your income or your revenue needs to be spent on development of you. And the development that you put inside of yourself. And so I think it's so important to think about that. And in January, obviously compression is a big piece of development. Reading is a big piece of development. But I started to, make strides towards, okay, if you're going to do $100 million in real estate, it's probably going to lead to $1 million in revenue for your business. 10% of that's 100 grand. Are you putting 100 grand back into yourself, not only in dollars, but time? I highly doubt it. So I mapped it out, and everything that I'm kind of doing right now, I'm sitting about $25,000 back into me this year. So I need to level that up, right? I need to level that back up into me. And maybe a piece of that development is hiring that personal assistant. And that could be one of the functions of helping me level up. So one of my biggest lessons learned was, keep tracking my activity, be open to everything and attached to nothing, but your development as an individual is crucial. Many times I hear when I speak to somebody, is like, you just don't sound like other people. Even when you're talking about, your commercial real estate, you're well prepared. You're talking about macroeconomic trends that are driving your decisions. You know what a price to earnings ratio is. You can define what IRR versus AAR is. You understand the mechanics of all of these things. It's because I have put the time and effort into me on that piece. Compression is another big piece of that, is becoming a compressor. So many people have just reached out recently, and I can really start to feel this momentum building. Everybody's like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And I said, go back to the featured post on my LinkedIn that now has 20,000 views and 275 comments about the journals. That's why I'm doing this. And so when I get new leads reaching out to me saying, found you on YouTube, or found via podcast, or, saw you on Bigger Pockets, it's all the different lines that I have out there. And they see the development that I'm putting in myself and saying, holy cow, this guy's doing this for himself. What is he doing for his business? That's somebody I want to be involved in. Prime example is this week. A guy didn't invest with us on this deal, no problem. But he's like, hey, Logan, I'm going to have to pass on this one. The timing is just too short. I have to move some money around. It's no issues. But in the email, he said, I was just talking to this person on how I vet general partners and sponsors. And I said, go look at Logan Freeman. And I was like, that is the type of response that I want to get because of the development that I'm putting into myself. It's the same thing on the brokerage side, Jerome. Like, I get pulled into meetings and conversations where people are like, I have no idea where to go from here. And it's just so clear for me because I have the experience, but I also have the wherewithal to stay calm, cool, and collected on those phone calls and give plan of action going forward. And so that only comes from development into me. So that was a really big lesson learned for me. The second one this month was, I've always been of this notion that, networking in my city didn't necessarily bring me new investors. And I'll say in January, I've been on the country club circuit, and it's a lot of fun because it ties right back into one of my other big goals, is spend time with guys that are leveling up. And so these guys are 15, 17 years older than me, 45 to 55. They're where I want to be from a business standpoint, not talking about personal relationships, just from a business standpoint. And all of them hang out at the Carriage Club, at the Kansas City Club, at Hallbrook, at all these different places. And I've been starting to get pulled into these conversations, which then starts, do you know this Logan Freeman guy? So the Kansas City referrals have really started to happen. And so a big lesson learned for me this month was just, I need to have a system of those relationships that I'm continuing to build, because we're starting to get way more momentum locally with investors that are then bringing deal flow in other investors into the project. Believe it or not, Kansas City is an extremely wealthy city. There is a ton of capital just sitting here. You just have to be able to infiltrate it in the right way. And I've started to take some strides on that. So I'm very excited about that. That was a huge lesson learned.
I think the network has a big payoff on the back end. The question that I was asking myself this morning at 2:30 was, should your friends, and this is going to be really crass, but should you have friends that can't do anything for you?
Mm-hmm.
Or should you be in a space where your relationships are mutually beneficial and moving you towards the things that you need or desire?
Yep.
And if you aren't, then why are you spending the time there? That is literally the question I'm pondering right now.
Sure. So I would recommend the law of 33% is the way I think about this.
Mhm.
I dropped this on Hunter's Raise Masters, 5 million in 30 days, but spend 33% of your time that people you can bring up, 33% of the time that are people are on your level, 33% of your time with people playing at a higher level. And so I always want to give back. So a lot of first calls that I do, just in Kansas City and meetings and in different speaking engagements are people that are at that level that are, the 33% that are below kind of where I am right now. I'm trying to help bring them back up. So if you can segment it out that way, that's at least the framework that I use.
Mm-hmm.
The last biggest.
How much of the time does your 33% get? The lower third? Is it really a third of the time, or is it something different?
Right now it is. And that's been a big question mark to me is, does that need to be less? Does it need to be more?
Yeah.
Can you systemize it? Can you create content that you can send to them that they can digest without you being, present? So big questions to think about. But I would say right now it absolutely might be actually more than 33% because I'm filling out kind of where I might be able to help, where they might be able to help. And I'll give Nushin a big shout out here on the call here is Nushin joined up on the book club. She was really interested in our latest offerings. She may or may not still invest. I don't know yet. But, I gave her enough time at the beginning that I said, hey, I'm going to help you out here. I'm going to introduce you to people. Then that started to level her up. Then she made a connection for me. Then she turned into she's 1 year out of college. She turned down to a prospective investor that I had no idea would have ever been an investor. Right. So it's just situations like that, I got to get a little bit more rifled in, but I would have never thought that would have turned into that. So Nushin, if you're listening to this, shout out to you, and you're going to do big things here in the city. Very excited about that. All right, man. The last lesson learned, I got to get more stuff, even more off of my plate. And we've talked enough about that. I think that we probably don't need to harp on that even more, but that's going to be a continued kind of goal on an ongoing basis. So that's biggest wins, losses, lessons learned of January, kind of where I'm moving this to, or at least the new monthly goals that I have for February is, I tie these back to my quarterly goals, guys. So in my journal, my monthly goals, there's 3 monthly goals for every 3 quarter goals that I have. And I've already sat down and spent the best time that I had thinking through those things. So I didn't even have to think about these monthly goals. They're already in my journal. I just needed to transcribe them and see if they were still applicable. And so the first one is in relation to my big goal of living out the gospel. And so I'm never reacting, always responding with empathy and being patient. Patience for me is a struggle on a regular basis. Patience with people, patience with results, patience with action, all of it. So making sure that I continue to focus on that, but never reacting is a crucial piece in my business. People judge you by the way that you respond or react to a situation. And I've learned in our business, it's literally never a positive to react without responding and thinking through that on a regular basis. So that's the first monthly goal this month. The second is continue to date Taylor. So we've been doing a good job on having weekly dates. She's handled a lot of the burden of getting those scheduled, where we're going, all of those fun things. But if anybody knows me intimately, we know that tonight, which is, Wednesday is our special night together where we have taco nights and spend all of our evening together. So I'm very excited about that. Continue to do that with my time, with dates, with the mini vacations that we talked about on the last episode, gifts, notes. I realized that I haven't wrote her a note in a long time. And she loves when I just sit down, grab this Pilot G2 because I never use anything but my Pilot G2 and just write a long letter to her on how I'm feeling. So that's a big piece. That's the second monthly goal, is to continue that. And the third, I talked a lot about Pareto principle. We have talked a lot about the Pareto's principle. But if you're being really honest with yourself and you're actually thinking about, okay, hey, here's my schedule for today. What am I doing? That's the 20% that are leading to the 80%. I know it's harder in a W-2 job, but as an entrepreneur, this is the one thing that will make a massive shift in your business. And so continuing to focus on high value tasks that we've talked about, delegating, getting stuff off my plate, and leveling up my time. I'm probably just going to harp on this until I feel like I have, arrived. And I don't know if I'll ever arrive, but the way that I make things happen is continuing to talk about them, continue to make sure I hold myself accountable, and I'm relaying that socially to get social proof to say, hey, this is something I'm going to be doing. So in the next 2 to 3 months, I very hope to have maybe a personal assistant sitting here on one of the compression episodes talking about what we're doing to implement that. I think that would be an incredible journey for people to go on. So those are my 3 monthly goals this month.
Outstanding.
So after reviewing my intentional quarter and month, we talked about changing some of the habits, the daily disciplines to turn into new habits. The number one that I'm changing, more work on myself. Guarding that time to get reboots during the week, not just from 3:30 to 6:30, but actual time on the schedule. Personal development, capital raising, sales and marketing, communication, all of those different things that I have the resources here. I just really need to dive into them.
Are you really going to get better at all of those things at the same time?
So the each one for me is at a different level itself. And so I think for me, the biggest one in that is communications and understanding sales funnels. And we've talked a lot about this, but I've interviewed probably 7 or 8, and I'm finally hiring a person to do our first sales funnel at FTW Investments, which I'm super stoked about. And so half of that is me learning about it, Jerome. Half of it is hiring people to do it for me, but understanding the mechanics behind it that will allow them to operate in their unique genius and me just to make changes to it if I see fit. More time to reboot and enjoy. So it's hard to hike right now in Kansas City. The trails are all covered in snow, but I drove by this store the other day, and it was a martial arts and jiu-jitsu store. And, I just thought about this because I was reading The Code by Jocko Willink, who's a big practitioner of jiu-jitsu. And I thought that maybe that might be an interesting way for me to, get physical activity, but also learn a new skill. I've heard there's a lot of mental components to jiu-jitsu and martial arts. So I just wrote that down this morning. I don't know where that's going to go yet, but I want to find more time to continue to reboot. So the mini vacations were a piece of that, but another big push to that is, if you can't go play basketball and, break your ankle again, or if you can't go, outside and walk and hike, then maybe there's a way that you can go do martial arts and jiu-jitsu. During COVID, I don't even know if that's an opportunity or not, but I drove by that store and it kind of caught my eye the other day. So I'm going to research that a little bit. Here's an interesting one. Breathe, And what I mean by this is I see a bunch of these high level guys talking about breathing techniques and all this stuff that they're doing throughout the day. I realize I hold my breath a lot. And when I hold my breath, my heart rate goes up. And when my heart rate goes up, I start to feel anxiety. When I start to feel anxiety, I start to get a little freak out. When I start to freak out, I start to not operate as well. And I start to think about all the things that are going wrong in my life. So you can see how that trigger just kind of continues to go. So using the release technique that Brendan Burchard has, using breathing techniques, or just focusing on breathing more in my day is going to be a new habit that I'm going to start trying to work towards. So those yeah.
Have you seen Wim Hof?
I've seen people post about him. I have not looked into any of his information or not.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And not
the Iceman, right?
Yeah. But just the places you can take your body to with breath is just, it's kind of, it's nothing short of impressive.
Absolutely. Tony Robbins, a big practitioner of that about breathing techniques as well. And so if those two guys are, practitioners, it's something I should look into.
Are you meditating?
I don't necessarily meditate. I pray a lot. I don't know if that's
they're interchangeable.
Yeah.
I do think they're interchangeable.
So sitting in silence, breathing, and letting whatever come to me, whatever you want to call the spirit or whatever, that you call it, is something that I do. I don't do it enough. And I definitely don't do it throughout the day. I do it great from 3:30 to 7:30, but after that, it's go, 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 go. So I definitely probably could do a better job of that throughout the day. Most definitely.
Just on the habit stacking front, I suspect your watch, but if not, Fitbit can remind you to take a break.
Yep.
Whatever intervals, hour, every 50 minutes, whatever it is. And there may be a function on your iWatch that will allow you to, hey, take a second.
I think this next trip to Verizon is going to be very big for me on a lot of fronts. Potentially getting the new phone, potentially getting an iWatch because I don't have one right now, and potentially getting an iPad, which will allow me not to have to stare at my little screen on my phone all the time. But I have these hands. Look at my head. I have a huge head. I have just as big hands, right? So like not straining myself looking at my phone like that all the time might be big. So this Verizon trip is much bigger for me than just like transferring from AT&T to Verizon. Yeah. It's actually, okay, the habits that I've been talking about, I'm going to implement them with the new technology that I'm actually bringing into my life. So I haven't just, gone there because I want to make sure that when I do, I have enough time to do it and I have all of the goals set out. So I might look into the iPhone watch as long as I can turn off all notifications, text messages, calls, all that stuff, because I don't want any of that on my wrist.
And I don't know if this is a plan already, but get the business plan.
Yes. I already have a business plan with those guys. So, yeah, because I have a hotspot too with them. So it'll be really easy. I just need to go get the right technology to start implementing. So sounds like I need to write down, get 3 hours and go to Verizon in the next week on my schedule. So maybe I'll try to do that next Friday. And I accidentally broke my screen on my phone, so I have to go get that fixed too. But those are all things that maybe a personal assistant could help me with. So.
Not maybe, they will. The thing I like most about Verizon is you can get the Pixel 5 or something.
Yep.
And that phone doesn't cost you anything on a business plan. And you just rock and roll, man. So
yeah, man. If I trade my iPhone in, I think they will give me a new phone.
For you, but for your assistant.
Yep.
Right. You want something that you're not paying out of pocket for.
Absolutely.
You don't want to put $600 into a device is what I'm getting at.
Absolutely. Won't do that. I'm the guy that it doesn't have any auto loans either. So I don't know if that's a controversial thing or not, but I can't pay $600 a month for a car. So anyways, if I can't afford going and buying it, then not going to do it. So things like that. I can't amortize my phone over 3 years. Just not going to happen. That doesn't jive with me. So we're going to leave you with this, guys. You can't build a successful career on your screw ups or even by fixing your faults. You build a successful career despite your faults by investing time, money, education, and practice into your gifts. It's important to be cognizant of your faults. But one thing that I do disagree with Jocko Willink on is finding your weaknesses and then making them your strengths. And I think that there's two parts of it. The first being understanding your weaknesses and either delegating or finding people that can help you with those. Or if it's a true weakness that is actually a strength of yours that's just weak because you haven't practiced on it, that's a different kind of conversation to have. But I hope that this, monthly reflection kind of gives people the idea that, hey, I'm not trying to fix all of my weaknesses. I'm trying to understand where my unique ability is and operate in that sweet spot even more. Any thoughts on that?
That's the magic, right? The genius zone. And that's where I'll leave it. The more time you spend in the genius zone is the more profits you'll make because everything else is in the way. More
on that on the next episode. There's a couple techniques that this, again, amazing book, 80/20 Sales and Marketing, talks through creating love lists, hate lists, and actually emailing your 5 in your core 5 and saying, what am I really good at? So Jerome, you're probably going to get an email from me very, very soon going through this process together. We'll have to craft who my 5 is because I have a lot of people in my life, but definitely want to continue to implement things like that. Until next time, guys, go out there and compress and be a compressor. Jerome, thanks again for your time.
Man, grateful to be here. Talk soon.
Hey compressors, if something you heard struck you, made you feel a little bit uncomfortable, good. Head on over to compressionpodcast.com. And then you can also subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts at. If you feel inclined to, please leave us a review. It's obviously helpful. But instead, I'm going to call you out today. I'm going to call you out and make sure that you do your part, sharing this message by sharing it with one person that might need to hear what we talked about today. Be great. Nothing else pays.